My mother has a saying: if you work hard, life will just give you more work. Her advice, however, was different for girls. She claimed that laziness was a virtue. The lazier you are, the happier your life will be. Naturally, I took her words to heart. Even after realizing I was cast as the villain in a storybook life, I couldn't be bothered to care. That is, until everything I built on strategic idleness came crashing down around me. I grew up in Pine Creek, one of those forgettable Midwestern towns where the main street has more vacant storefronts than businesses. My mother raised me alone in a small two-bedroom rental on the edge of town. Every morning, she would leave before sunrise, her hands already raw from years of scrubbing other people's toilets and polishing their marble countertops. "Watch and learn, Arturo," she would say, as she packed her cleaning supplies into a worn plastic caddy. "This is what happens to people who work too hard. They just get more work." As a child, I would sit at our kitchen table after school, waiting for her return. When she finally walked through the door in the evening, her shoulders slumped with exhaustion, she would kick off her shoes and collapse into a chair. "The Andersons added another bathroom to clean today," she might say. No extra pay, of course. Mrs. Anderson just smiled and said, "You do such a wonderful job, Patty. I knew you wouldn't mind." What struck me most about my mother's life was the stark contrast between her and the women whose homes she cleaned. While my mother's hands were cracked and calloused, her employers lounged by their pools or met friends for lunch. Their nails were perfectly manicured, their clothes unwrinkled, their time their own. Those women figured it out, my mother would tell me. Usually after her second glass of cheap wine. Find someone to take care of you. That's the secret. Working hard just gets you more work. I remember asking her once why she didn't follow her own advice. She laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "Too late for me, sweetheart, but not for you. Especially not for girls these days. Men love taking care of a woman who seems helpless. A little bit of charm and helplessness will get you further than a lifetime of hard work." The irony that I was her son, not her daughter, never seemed to register with her. Perhaps it was because I was small for my age, or maybe because my father had abandoned us before I was born. Whatever the reason, she raised me on advice meant for girls, and I soaked it up like a sponge. By junior high, I had perfected the art of strategic laziness. I learned to read teachers quickly, figuring out exactly how little work I could do while maintaining their goodwill. I discovered that a winning smile and an earnest "I'm trying" my best could earn me extensions, extra help, and lowered expectations. In high school, I refined my technique further. I never refused to do work outright. That would make me a troublemaker. Instead, I became the king of almost. I almost understood the assignment. I almost finished the project. I almost had time to study for the test. My perpetual state of well-intentioned incompletion inspired more help than resentment. "Poor Arturo," my teachers would say. "He tries so hard." But I wasn't trying at all. I was calculating exactly how much effort would yield the maximum return. My friend Trevor was the opposite. He stayed up late completing assignments, joined every club, volunteered on weekends. While I played video games and perfected the art of looking busy while doing nothing, Trevor built an impressive resume of actual achievements. When graduation approached, Trevor stressed about college applications and recommendation letters. I hadn't bothered applying anywhere. College seemed like a lot of work with uncertain payoff. Besides, my mother's philosophy suggested I find someone to take care of me, not invest in my own capabilities. The twist in my story came 1 month before graduation. Trevor's father, who owned a successful marketing firm in the nearest city, invited me to his office. "Trevor tells me you have a natural talent for persuasion," he said, leaning back in his expensive leather chair. "Says you can talk anyone into anything." I smiled modestly, though inside I was confused. Trevor and I weren't particularly close. What game was he playing? "My son works too hard," Mr. Peterson continued. "Always has. Reminds me of myself at his age." But business isn't just about hard work. It's about personality, connections, the ability to make people feel good. He offered me a job on the spot. Entry level, but with potential for advancement. No college degree required. Just charm and the ability to make clients feel heard. That evening, I told my mother about the offer, expecting her to be proud of how well I'd applied her lessons. Instead, she looked almost disappointed. "Be careful, Arturo," she said quietly. "Sometimes the easy path leads places you didn't expect to go." I laughed off her concern. Easy was the point, wasn't it? Trevor would spend 4 years struggling through college while I earned money and connections. My mother's philosophy had been proven right on the very threshold of adulthood. Strategic laziness had already opened doors that hard work had kept firmly shut. 2 weeks after graduation, I started at Peterson Marketing. With a new suit my mother helped me buy, and the unshakable conviction that doing the minimum would carry me further than doing my best. My first day at Peterson Marketing, I arrived 30 minutes early, not to prepare or familiarize myself with the office, but because I had already learned an important lesson about looking industrious while doing nothing. Early arrivers are assumed to be hardworking, regardless of what they actually accomplish during those extra minutes. The receptionist, a woman named Donna with a sensible haircut and practical shoes, nodded approvingly when I walked in. "You must be Arturo. Mr. Peterson mentioned you'd be starting today." Most new hires barely make it on time. I smiled warmly. I believe in making a good impression, and that became my entire strategy. Not doing good work, but creating the impression of value. Within my first month, I had mapped the political landscape of Peterson Marketing with the precision of a cartographer. I identified who held real power, who merely had titles, and most importantly, who needed to believe they were appreciated. Donna, I quickly realized, was the true gatekeeper. She controlled access to Mr. Peterson and knew every detail of office politics. Rather than dismissing her as just a receptionist, like many of my colleagues did, I made a point of bringing her coffee occasionally and asking about her grandchildren. "You're different from the other young people here," she told me one morning. "They're all ambition and no awareness." By awareness, she meant attention to the human element, the relationships that kept business flowing. I wasn't more aware out of genuine interest, though. It was simply another calculated move in my strategy of minimal effort, maximum return. In meetings, I perfected the art of speaking last. I would listen carefully as others presented ideas and worked through problems. Then, just before the meeting concluded, I would synthesize what everyone had said, presenting it as a cohesive summary that often earned nods of approval. "Arturo has a talent for seeing the big picture," Mr. Peterson remarked at my 3-month review. "While others get lost in the details, he keeps his eye on what matters." What Mr. Peterson didn't realize was that I had no capacity for details whatsoever. My big picture thinking was simply a cover for not doing the granular work that my colleagues labored over nights and weekends. My days at Peterson Marketing followed a carefully crafted pattern. I arrived early to be seen at my desk before others. I scheduled meetings strategically throughout the day to create the appearance of constant engagement. I took lunch with different colleagues each day, building allies rather than accomplishments. When projects came my way, I became an expert at what I called delegative collaboration. This impressive-sounding technique was really just passing work to others under the guise of teamwork. "Jessica, your copy is always so strong. Would you mind looking at this draft? I value your perspective," I would say, handing over what was essentially a blank slate for her to fill in. Jessica was one of the hardest working people at the agency. She arrived early, stayed late, and poured herself into every project as if the company's success rested solely on her shoulders. While I admired her dedication in an abstract way, I also recognized her as the perfect target for my particular brand of charm. She took on my work without complaint, often expressing gratitude for being included in my projects. Meanwhile, I received credit for the final product, making sure to praise her contribution publicly, just enough to seem generous, but not enough to shift the primary recognition. 3 years into my tenure at Peterson Marketing, I had cultivated an image as a relationship guy. Clients liked me because I listened well and never challenged them. Colleagues appreciated that I was always willing to brainstorm, meaning listen to their ideas without contributing my own. Management saw me as a team player who never caused problems. What no one seemed to notice was that I rarely produced anything tangible. My personnel file contained glowing reviews, but few concrete achievements. I had mastered the art of seeming essential while being functionally decorative. The greatest test of my strategic laziness came when the company decided to create a new position: creative director. This role would oversee all client campaigns and report directly to Mr. Peterson. It represented a significant promotion with a substantial salary increase. The obvious candidate was Jessica. Over 4 years, she had built an impressive portfolio of successful campaigns. Clients requested her by name. Her work had won industry awards. She had earned it by any objective measure. I, on the other hand, had a collection of relationships and a reputation for being easy to work with. No portfolio, no awards. Just goodwill and strategic visibility. When Mr. Peterson called me into his office, I expected to be asked for my opinion on Jessica's promotion. Instead, he offered me the position. "We need someone with people skills in this role," he explained. "Someone who can manage creative types without getting lost in the weeds. Jessica is brilliant, but she's not a leader. You are." I accepted the promotion with well-practiced humility, expressing surprise and gratitude in equal measure. Internally, though, I felt a surge of vindication. My mother had been right all along. The path of least resistance had led to the greatest reward. The twist came during the company meeting where my promotion was announced. As congratulations poured in, I caught Jessica's expression across the conference room. It wasn't anger or resentment that flashed across her face. It was pity. As if she knew something about me that I didn't know myself. That night, celebrating with an expensive bottle of whiskey in my newly leased luxury apartment, I pushed away the discomfort her look had stirred. This was success, wasn't it? I had a 6-figure salary, a corner office, and the respect of my peers. All achieved through careful cultivation of appearance over substance. If there was a hollow feeling beneath it all, I wasn't bothered enough to examine it. After all, caring too much was exactly what I had been taught to avoid. My approach to dating mirrored my professional strategy: maximum return for minimum investment. I sought women who were caretakers by nature, the ones who derived satisfaction from fixing, helping, and supporting others. They were easy to identify, and even easier to charm. "You're such a good listener," they would inevitably say on first dates. I was indeed a good listener, but not out of genuine interest. Listening required less effort than talking, and it provided valuable information about their needs and vulnerabilities. Information I could use to position myself as exactly what they were looking for. My relationships typically lasted between 3 and 6 months. Long enough to enjoy the benefits of having someone care for me, but not so long that they began noticing the fundamental imbalance between giving and receiving. I became adept at ending things just before that recognition dawned, usually by creating a narrative that cast me as emotionally complex rather than emotionally withholding. "I care about you too much to hold you back," I would say, or, "You deserve someone who can match your capacity for love." This pattern served me well until I met Tara. She was different from my usual type, more self-sufficient and ambitious. We met at an industry conference where she represented a potential client. Her sharp wit and direct manner caught me off guard, disrupting my well-rehearsed charm. "Your pitch was all style and no substance," she told me over drinks after the formal presentations. "But I liked your shoes, so I'm willing to hear more." Her honesty was disarming. Most people were too polite or too intimidated to call out the emptiness behind my professional persona. Tara saw right through it and didn't seem particularly bothered. She wasn't impressed by me, which naturally made me want to impress her. Our relationship developed quickly, fueled by a chemistry I hadn't experienced before. For the first time, I found myself actually putting in effort, planning thoughtful dates and engaging in real conversations. I wasn't just performing attentiveness, I was genuinely attentive. 6 months in, Tara suggested we move in together. Her lease was ending, and it made practical sense. I agreed without my usual calculation of convenience versus commitment. Something about Tara made me want to break my own rules. But old habits die hard. Once the novelty of cohabitation wore off, I gradually reverted to my familiar patterns. I employed strategic incompetence around household chores, ensuring that Tara would take over rather than endure my deliberate failures. "I don't think I'm using the right detergent," I would say, presenting a pink-tinged load of formerly white laundry. Or, the vacuum seems complicated. Can you show me again how it works? After a few attempts at teaching me, Tara would inevitably sigh and say, I'll just do it myself. Which was, of course, the intended outcome. I applied the same technique to cooking, cleaning, and scheduling. Each time Tara attempted to divide responsibilities equally, I would demonstrate just enough ineptitude to make her reconsider. Within 4 months of moving in together, she handled virtually all domestic labor, while also advancing her own demanding career. I wasn't completely without contribution. I had mastered the art of the grand gesture, the occasional romantic surprise that erased weeks of imbalance. A weekend getaway planned when Tara seemed particularly frustrated. An expensive piece of jewelry on her birthday. These intermittent demonstrations of care were far less costly to me than daily participation would have been. Our relationship settled into a comfortable pattern, at least from my perspective. Tara worked hard at her job and at maintaining our home, while I enjoyed the benefits of her efforts. I was fond of her in my way, appreciative of her competence and occasionally moved by genuine affection. If there was an emptiness at the center of our connection, I chose not to examine it too closely. Then came the morning I borrowed Tara's laptop to check my email while mine charged. A notification popped up from her calendar. Final interview, Harris Agency, Chicago. Chicago was 600 miles away. Tara had never mentioned applying for jobs out of state. My first reaction wasn't hurt or betrayal. It was inconvenience. If Tara moved, I would need to find someone else to manage the aspects of life I had carefully avoided mastering. The emotional implications didn't register until I noticed another open tab on her browser. It was a series of messages between Tara and her friend Allison. Scrolling through, my name caught my eye. I can't do it anymore, Tara had written. Living with Arturo is like having an attractive but useless houseplant. Looks nice, but needs constant care and gives nothing back. Allison's response was even more cutting. You've been dating a parasite. Good-looking parasites are still parasites. The conversation continued, detailing all the ways I had failed as a partner. Their assessment was clinical and comprehensive, missing nothing of my calculated helplessness and emotional withholding. I closed the laptop, feeling strangely hollow. For the first time, I was seeing myself through someone else's eyes, and the image was unflattering at best, despicable at worst. More unsettling than the criticism itself was the realization that I couldn't even argue with it. Everything they had said was objectively true. That evening, I attempted to engage Tara in conversation about future plans, trying to extract information without revealing what I had discovered. She answered vaguely, her attention focused on a work presentation. I watched her typing efficiently, handling complex data with ease, and wondered if she had ever seen me as anything other than another item on her to-do list. The twist came 3 days later when I returned home to find Tara sitting at our dining table, a glass of wine in front of her, and a resolved expression on her face. We need to talk, she said simply. I prepared my usual charm offensive, ready to smooth over whatever grievance she wanted to address. But before I could speak, she continued. I've accepted a position in Chicago. I'm moving at the end of the month. Her directness left no room for negotiation or manipulation. This wasn't a threat or a bid for more attention. It was a decision already made. When were you going to tell me? I asked, trying to sound wounded rather than caught off guard. I'm telling you now. Tara took a sip of wine, her eyes clear and unapologetic. I'm not asking you to come with me. The finality of her statement hit harder than I expected. For all my careful avoidance of real investment in our relationship, I had assumed she was fully invested in me. The discovery that she could walk away so decisively undermined, not just this relationship, but my entire approach to human connection. Is this because I don't do enough around the house? I attempted, hoping for a simple grievance I could promise to address. Tara actually laughed. No, Arturo. It's because you don't do enough in life. You're coasting. You have been since the day we met. I thought maybe you just needed someone to believe in you, to push you a little. But you don't want to be pushed. You like who you are. And who am I? The question came out more vulnerable than I intended. You're someone who takes, from your job, from your friends, from me. You take time, energy, care, opportunities, and you give back just enough to keep people from walking away. She finished her wine and set down the glass with a decisive thunk. Except I am walking away. I had no script for this moment, no practiced response to such a fundamental rejection. For once, charm felt not just inadequate but inappropriate. I care about you, I said, and was surprised to discover I meant it. No, Tara replied gently. You care about what I do for you. That's not the same thing. She moved out the following weekend. I stood in our half-empty apartment, surrounded by gaps where her belongings had been, and felt a corresponding emptiness inside myself. Somehow, in avoiding the work of real connection, I had missed out on its rewards as well. Part 5. Crisis and Confrontation. The Monday after Tara left, I arrived at the office with my customary appearance of purpose. I nodded to colleagues, scheduled my usual strategic meetings, and maintained the carefully crafted persona that had carried me to the position of creative director. If I felt hollowed out by Tara's departure and her brutally accurate assessment of my character, I kept it hidden behind my practiced smile. Around 11, I headed to the break room for coffee. As I approached, I heard voices from inside. Arturo's team is behind schedule again, someone was saying. It sounded like Mark from the production department. Are you surprised? Replied another voice, which I recognized as Ryan from accounting. The man's all talk. Has been since Peterson hired him. Nepotism hire, Mark agreed. Trevor's old buddy, never seen him actually complete anything himself. I froze outside the door, coffee mug in hand. Jessica carries that whole department, Ryan continued. Everyone knows it. She does the work. Arturo takes the credit. Dead weight, Mark said with finality. But he's got Peterson convinced he walks on water. I backed away quietly, returning to my office without the coffee I had intended to get. The conversation echoed uncomfortably with Tara's parting words. Was this how everyone saw me? As a fraud who contributed nothing of value? That afternoon, Mr. Peterson called a company-wide meeting. The economy was showing signs of downturn, he explained, and Peterson marketing needed to right-size operations. There would be evaluations of all departments over the coming weeks, with staffing decisions to follow. We need to identify our essential personnel, Mr. Peterson said, his gaze sweeping across the conference room. Those who truly drive value for our clients. For the first time in my career, I felt a flicker of genuine fear. I had cultivated the appearance of value without creating actual value. In a time of abundance, the difference was easy to overlook. In scarcity, it might become glaringly obvious. The following weeks brought increasing pressure. Clients, nervous about the economic climate, demanded more concrete results for their marketing dollars. Mr. Peterson instituted weekly performance reviews, requiring each department head to present measurable outcomes. My usual tactics began to fail me. Delegating work to others was harder when everyone feared for their jobs. My charm offensive faltered as clients demanded substance over reassurance. Even Donna at reception seemed less receptive to my morning pleasantries, too stressed about potential layoffs to be soothed by small talk. The crisis point came during a presentation to our largest client, Franklin Automotive. Mr. Peterson attended personally, expecting me to dazzle the client with innovative strategies for their upcoming product launch. I had assigned Jessica to develop the actual campaign concepts, planning to present her work as a collaborative effort. But Jessica was out sick that day. My texts and calls went unanswered. When the time came to present, I found myself standing before the client with nothing but vague generalities and marketing jargon. We're thinking disruption, I began, falling back on buzzwords. Cutting-edge integration of traditional and digital spaces to create a multi-platform user experience that resonates with your core demographics while expanding market penetration. Mr. Franklin, the silver-haired CEO of Franklin Automotive, stared at me impassively. Sounds impressive, he said, after an uncomfortable silence. Now, show me what that actually means. I had no slides, no mock-ups, no concrete examples to share. For 10 excruciating minutes, I attempted to maintain my facade of competence, while delivering absolutely nothing of substance. The client's expression shifted from expectant to confused to openly contemptuous. When I finally concluded my empty presentation, Mr. Franklin turned to Mr. Peterson. "Tom, we've worked together for 15 years. If this is the best your agency can offer, maybe it's time we explore other options." The drive back to the office passed in tense silence. Mr. Peterson, normally expansive and jovial, stared straight ahead as he drove, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. "My office. Now," was all he said when we arrived. I sat across from him, watching as he removed his glasses and pinched the bridge of his nose. When he finally spoke, his voice was controlled but laced with disappointment. "I took a chance on you, Arturo. Trevor said you had potential. I believed him. Sir, I can explain about today. Jessica was supposed to—" He cut me off with a raised hand. "This isn't about today. This is about your entire approach. You've been style over substance from day one. I overlooked it because clients seem to like you. But I can't afford to carry anyone who doesn't produce real value. Not in this economy." The word carry echoed Tara's parasite assessment so precisely that I flinched. "I'm putting you on a performance improvement plan," Mr. Peterson continued. 30 days to demonstrate actual contribution to this agency. Not relationships, not meetings. Tangible, measurable work product. If you can't deliver, we'll have to part ways. I left his office in a daze. A performance improvement plan was essentially a countdown to termination. Everyone knew that. It gave the company documentation to fire you while giving you the illusion of a chance to improve. As I passed Jessica's empty desk, I felt a flash of resentment. If she had been there, if she had created the presentation as planned, none of this would be happening. But the feeling faded quickly, replaced by the uncomfortable recognition that I had relied on her talent for years while claiming joint credit for her work. I returned to my apartment that evening to find a final message from Tara. She had officially moved to Chicago and wished me well. The polite formality of her text underscored the completeness of her departure from my life. Standing in my half-empty apartment, professionally endangered and personally abandoned, I faced the most difficult truth of all. I had nothing and no one to blame but myself. The twist came when I checked my email one last time before bed. There was a message from Jessica, explaining her absence. Her mother had suffered a stroke, and she had rushed to be with her in the hospital. Despite this personal emergency, she had completed the Franklin Automotive presentation and attached all relevant files. "I'm sorry I couldn't be there today," she wrote. "I hope everything went well." I stared at the perfectly executed presentation she had created despite her crisis. The contrast between her work ethic and my own had never been so stark. While I had spent years avoiding effort, Jessica had consistently delivered excellence, even under the most difficult circumstances. For the first time, I questioned my mother's philosophy at its foundation. Had the path of strategic laziness really led me to success? Or had it brought me to this moment of professional peril and personal emptiness, with nothing solid to stand on when challenges arose? The week following my disastrous presentation and placement on the performance improvement plan, I attempted to maintain appearances at work. I arrived early, scheduled meetings, and moved papers around my desk with purpose. But the familiar rhythm of seeming busy, while doing nothing now, filled me with anxiety rather than satisfaction. Every morning, Mr. Peterson would stop by my office with the same question. "What tangible progress do you have to show me today?" And every day, I had nothing substantial to offer. Years of avoiding real work had left me without the skills or habits needed to suddenly become productive. I didn't know how to create a marketing campaign from scratch. I had never actually used the design software our creative team relied on. I couldn't even write compelling copy without Jessica's help. By Friday, the pretense had become unsustainable. I left the office at noon, unable to endure another disappointed look from Mr. Peterson or another awkward interaction with colleagues who clearly knew I was on the way out. At home, I faced the practical consequences of Tara's departure. Simple tasks I had always left to her now confronted me with my own incompetence. The laundry piled up because I didn't know which settings to use on the washing machine. Dirty dishes accumulated in the sink. I ordered takeout for every meal because cooking had always been too complicated for me to learn. My apartment began to reflect the disorder of my life, cluttered, neglected, and showing obvious signs of decline. One evening, attempting to microwave a frozen dinner, I somehow managed to start a small fire. Standing in my kitchen, waving a dish towel at the smoking appliance, I reached a new level of self-awareness. I was, at 30 years old, fundamentally helpless. With growing desperation, I reached out to friends. My social circle had always been wide but shallow. I knew where the best happy hours were, could recommend trendy restaurants, and maintained a roster of casual acquaintances. But as I scrolled through my contacts, I realized I had few genuine connections. Trevor, whose father had hired me, responded to my text with polite distance. Swamped with work right now. Maybe next week? Other friends offered similar deflections. No one seemed particularly eager to help or even listen. Had they all seen through me all along? Had they, like Tara, recognized what I took without giving back? By Sunday night, isolated and increasingly anxious about the coming work week, I did something I hadn't done in years. I called my mother. "Arturo?" She sounded surprised. "Is everything okay? You never call this late." I hadn't planned to unburden myself. Our relationship had always been affectionate but not particularly deep. But something about her familiar voice broke through my remaining defenses. "Everything's falling apart, Mom," I admitted, my voice cracking. "Work, Tara, everything. I don't know what to do." There was a pause before she responded. "Oh, honey, what happened?" I told her everything. The performance improvement plan, Tara's departure, my realization that I had no real skills or meaningful relationships. As I spoke, the full scope of my emptiness became painfully clear. I had spent my entire adult life avoiding difficulty, but in doing so, I had also avoided growth. When I finished, my mother was quiet for so long I thought we'd been disconnected. "Mom, are you there?" "I'm here," she said softly. I never thought you would take it so literally." "Take what literally?" "All that nonsense about laziness being a virtue. About finding someone to take care of you." She sighed deeply. "That wasn't advice, Arturo. That was bitterness. That was me, exhausted and frustrated, trying to make sense of a life that hadn't gone as planned." I sat down heavily on my couch. "But you said it all the time. About how those women had figured it out. About how working hard just gets you more work. I was tired, baby. I was cleaning houses all day and raising you alone all night. Sometimes complaining was the only thing that kept me going." Her voice grew stronger. "But I never stopped working, did I? I never gave up or expected someone else to carry me." The truth of her words hit me with unexpected force. My mother had worked every day of her life, regardless of her complaints. She had raised me alone, kept a roof over our heads, put food on our table. There had been no strategic laziness in her actions, only in her frustrated words. "I failed you," she continued. "I should have taught you better. Should have shown you that there's dignity in work, in being capable." "It's not your fault," I said, meaning it. I heard what I wanted to hear. After we hung up, I sat in my darkened apartment, confronting the foundation of sand upon which I had built my entire adult life. I had constructed an identity around avoiding effort, around getting others to carry my burdens. And now, when I actually needed to stand on my own, I had no strength in my legs. The next morning, I arrived at the office earlier than usual. Instead of my normal routine of appearing busy, I went directly to Jessica's desk. She had returned to work, though her eyes showed the strain of her mother's health crisis. "I need your help," I said without preamble. Jessica looked up, surprise evident on her face. In all our years of working together, I had never directly asked for help. I had manipulated, flattered, and maneuvered to get what I needed, but I had never simply asked. "With what?" Her tone was cautious. "With everything," I admitted. "I don't know how to do my job. I never have." The words hung between us. The most honest statement I had made in years. Jessica studied my face, perhaps looking for signs of my usual manipulation. Finding none, her expression softened slightly. "Why should I help you? You took the promotion that should have been mine." "I know. You deserved it. You still do." I swallowed hard. "I can't undo that. But I can try to become someone who actually contributes something worthwhile." Jessica considered this for a long moment. Then, to my surprise, she smiled. Not warmly, but with a kind of grudging respect. "Monday mornings at 7, she said finally. "Before the office opens. I'll teach you the basics of what you should already know. But not because you deserve it." "Why then?" Her answer was the twist I never saw coming. "Because I've watched you fake your way through this job for years," Jessica said. "And part of me has always wondered what you could accomplish if you actually tried. If there's actual talent under all that charm and strategic incompetence, I guess I'm curious to find out." Her assessment was neither kind nor cruel. It was something far more valuable. Honest. For the first time in my professional life, someone was seeing me clearly and still offering a chance. Not because of what I appeared to be, but because of what I might become. Monday morning at 6:45, I stood outside the office building, 2 cups of coffee in hand. I had barely slept, partly from anxiety about the day ahead, partly from the strange energy that had filled me since my conversation with Jessica. It felt almost like excitement, though tinged with fear. At precisely 7, Jessica arrived, keycard ready. She accepted the coffee with a nod, but no thanks. This wasn't a social arrangement, it was a professional one. I followed her to the conference room, where she had already set up a laptop and projector. "First things first," she said, not bothering with small talk. "Do you know how to use InDesign?" "Not really," I admitted. "Illustrator?" I shook my head. "Photoshop? Basic HTML? Analytics platforms?" Each question received the same negative response. Jessica sighed, not with disappointment, but with confirmation of what she had suspected all along. "We have a lot of ground to cover." Over the next 3 hours, Jessica introduced me to the basic tools of our trade. No charm or strategic incompetence could hide the fact that I was starting from zero. The learning curve was steep, and my progress was painfully slow. "This is actually more complicated than I make it look," Jessica said at one point, a rare moment of levity as I struggled with even the simplest functions. "Everything is," I replied, surprised by my own sincerity. That first session set the pattern for the weeks that followed. Every morning, I arrived early for Jessica's crash course in marketing fundamentals. Every evening, I stayed late practicing what I had learned. Weekends, once devoted to leisure and recovery from the minimal effort I expended during the week, became intensive self-education periods. The physical toll surprised me. Actual concentration and effort left me exhausted in ways that strategic laziness never had. My eyes burned from staring at screens. My back ached from hours of focused work. My brain felt simultaneously overloaded and more alive than it had in years. But more challenging than the physical discomfort was the psychological adjustment. I had built my entire identity around being effortlessly successful. Now I was effortful and struggling. The temptation to revert to my old patterns was constant. Why push through the difficulty when charm and delegation had served me so well for so long? Each time that thought arose, I remembered Tara's face as she told me she was leaving. I recalled Mr. Peterson's disappointment. I pictured my mother, working through exhaustion to provide for me. And I pushed myself to continue. Small victories began to accumulate. I created my first original graphic without assistance. I wrote copy that Jessica deemed not terrible. I built a simple but functional campaign microsite from scratch. None of these accomplishments would impress a professional with appropriate experience, but for me, they represented genuine progress. "You're getting better," Jessica acknowledged 2 weeks into our training sessions. "Faster than I expected, actually." "I've had a good teacher," I said, the compliment automatic. Jessica rolled her eyes. "Save the charm for clients." I'm immune, but I noticed she didn't hide her smile entirely. The changes extended beyond work. At home, I forced myself to learn the basic life skills I had always avoided. I followed online tutorials for laundry and cooking. I cleaned my apartment thoroughly for the first time since moving in. Each task was more complicated than I had pretended, but also more satisfying once mastered. I even reached out to Tara, not to win her back, but to apologize properly. "I never gave as much as I took," I wrote in an email. "You deserved better. I hope Chicago is everything you wanted it to be." Her reply was brief, but not unkind. Thanks for saying that. I hope you find what you're looking for too. As the end of my 30-day performance improvement plan approached, I worked frantically to develop a campaign worthy of presentation. Mr. Peterson had made it clear that my continued employment depended on demonstrating actual value, not just the appearance of it. The night before my final evaluation, I sat alone in the office, refining my presentation. Every element represented my own work, awkward and imperfect, as it might be compared to what Jessica could have produced. But it was mine, created through genuine effort rather than strategic delegation. Around midnight, Jessica appeared in the doorway of the conference room where I had spread out my materials. "Still here?" she asked, though it was obvious. I nodded, too focused to elaborate. She entered the room and examined my work silently. I waited for her assessment, suddenly nervous about her opinion in a way I had never been before. "It's not bad," she said finally. "The concept is solid. The execution needs work, but the ideas are good." Coming from Jessica, this qualified as high praise. I felt a rush of unfamiliar pride. Not in my ability to charm or manipulate, but in having created something worthy of a professional's approval. "Thank you," I said simply, "for everything, for giving me a chance when you had every reason not to." Jessica considered me for a moment. "You know, I never actually hated you. You should have. I took credit for your work. I got promoted over you." "True." She smiled slightly. "But I always saw something in you worth salvaging. A spark of actual talent underneath all the bullshit." I'm glad I wasn't entirely wrong. The twist came the following afternoon, after my presentation to Mr. Peterson. I had delivered my campaign with the genuine enthusiasm of someone who had created rather than appropriated. He had listened attentively, asked thoughtful questions, and thanked me for my efforts. Then he had fired me anyway. "This is good work, Arturo. Much better than I expected, honestly. You've clearly put in the effort." He leaned back in his chair, expression regretful but resolved. "But a month of improvement doesn't erase years of coasting. The company is letting 20% of our staff go. I need people I can count on long term." No amount of protest or promises changed his mind. By 5 o'clock, I had cleared my desk and turned in my keycard. As I waited for the elevator, Jessica appeared beside me. "I heard," she said simply. "So much for transformation," I replied, unable to keep the bitterness from my voice. "All that work for nothing." Jessica's response was unexpected. "The work wasn't for Peterson. It was for you, and it doesn't have to end here." I looked at her, confused. "I'm starting my own agency," she continued. "Small, focused on quality over connections. I need people willing to actually work, not just talk about working." "Are you offering me a job?" "No." Her smile was genuine now. "I'm offering you an apprenticeship. Low pay, long hours, steep learning curve, but a chance to build something real." As the elevator doors opened, I found myself at another crossroads. The easy path would be to leverage my connections, find another position where charm could substitute for competence. The difficult path stood before me in the form of Jessica's challenging offer. "When do I start?" I asked, stepping into the elevator with a sense of purpose I had never known before. 6 months after losing my position at Peterson Marketing, I sat at a small desk in the corner of a converted warehouse space that served as Jessica's fledgling agency. The space was functional rather than impressive, with concrete floors and exposed brick walls. No corner offices, no expensive artwork, just an open floor plan filled with people actually working. My apprenticeship had proven even more challenging than Jessica had warned. The pay was barely enough to cover rent on my drastically downsized apartment. The hours extended well beyond traditional workdays. The learning curve wasn't steep, it was vertical. But for the first time in my adult life, I was earning every dollar and every small victory. When Jessica approved one of my concepts or clients responded positively to my work, the satisfaction ran deeper than any praise I had received for my previous performances of competence. "Check this out," I called to Jessica, who was working at her own station nearby. I turned my monitor to show her a campaign I had developed for a local restaurant. She examined it critically, making me wait for her verdict. "The copy's strong. The visuals need refinement, but the concept works. Send me the files, and I'll give you detailed feedback. Coming from Jessica, this was effusive praise. I felt a surge of genuine pride, not in my ability to charm or delegate, but in having created something worthy of professional respect. The most surprising aspect of my new life was how I felt at the end of each exhausting day. Instead of the empty fatigue that had followed my performances of productivity at Peterson Marketing, I experienced a kind of satisfied weariness. My body and mind might be tired, but it was the tiredness of actual accomplishment. One Saturday morning, I drove to my mother's modest apartment on the edge of town. Since our phone conversation 6 months earlier, we had been rebuilding our relationship on more honest terms. No more pretense, no more strategic interactions, just the sometimes awkward, sometimes beautiful reality of two imperfect people connecting genuinely. "You look different," she said as she opened the door. "Tired, but good tired." I smiled, recognizing the truth in her observation. Working hard will do that to you. We sat at her small kitchen table, the same one where I had waited for her returns from cleaning houses throughout my childhood. I watched as she prepared coffee with practiced efficiency, her movements economical but not hurried. "I've been thinking about what you said," I told her. "About dignity in work. I didn't understand it before, but I think I'm starting to." She nodded, sliding a mug toward me. "It took me a long time to learn that lesson myself. All those years complaining about the work, and I never realized that the work itself was saving me, giving me purpose. I wish I had seen that sooner," I admitted. "I wasted so much time." "Not wasted," my mother corrected gently. "Learned from. That's different." After coffee, I insisted on helping her with some repairs around her apartment. I fixed a leaky faucet, replaced a broken cabinet hinge, and troubleshot her temperamental refrigerator. These were skills I had acquired recently out of necessity, but using them to help my mother gave them new meaning. "When did you get so handy?" she asked, as I successfully adjusted her refrigerator's temperature control. "When I ran out of excuses not to be," I replied honestly. That evening, I met Jessica at a coffee shop to discuss a potential new client. Our working relationship had evolved over the months, becoming more collaborative as I proved my willingness to put in the effort she had always suspected I was capable of. "Small business, limited budget, but interesting product," Jessica explained, sliding a folder across the table. "Could be a good portfolio builder." I opened the folder to find information about a local skincare line developed by a chemist turned entrepreneur. "Looks promising. When's the pitch meeting?" "Tuesday at 3. You'll lead it." I looked up, surprised. "Me? Not you?" Jessica shrugged, but I could see she was suppressing a smile. "You've earned the opportunity. Don't make me regret it." The vote of confidence affected me more deeply than I would have expected. After years of receiving unearned opportunities, being trusted with something I had actually worked for felt fundamentally different. The following Tuesday, I delivered the pitch to our potential client. Not with my old charm offensive, but with genuine enthusiasm for her product and clear, concrete ideas for marketing it effectively. When she signed the contract at the end of our meeting, the satisfaction was incomparable to any of my previous successes. "You closed it," Jessica said as we walked back to the office. "Nice work." "Thanks," I replied, then added, "for everything. Not just this opportunity, for seeing something in me worth salvaging." Jessica laughed. "Don't get sentimental on me now, we have work to do." But her tone belied her words. We had both recognized something valuable in our working relationship, a balance of her discipline and my developing creativity that produced results neither of us could achieve alone. 3 weeks later, I was working late when a notification popped up on my phone, an email from Tara. My heart beat faster as I opened it. "In town for a conference," she wrote. "Would be good to catch up if you're free." We met the following evening at a restaurant halfway between my new apartment and her hotel. I arrived early, nervous in a way I hadn't been in years. This wasn't the artificial anxiety I had sometimes performed to seem vulnerable. This was genuine concern about how she would see the person I was becoming. Tara looked good. Chicago suited her. She carried herself with the same confidence but seemed more relaxed, more at ease in her own skin. "You look different," she said after we ordered drinks, unconsciously echoing my mother's observation. "I feel different," I admitted. "Pretty much everything's changed since you left." Over dinner, I told her about losing my job, about Jessica's apprenticeship offer, about the difficult but rewarding work of rebuilding myself from the ground up. I shared the humbling experience of learning skills I should have mastered years ago, the physical and mental demands of real effort, and the surprising satisfaction that came with earned achievement. Tara listened without interrupting, her expression shifting from skepticism to something approaching respect. "I never thought I'd say this," she said when I finished. "But I'm proud of you, Arturo. Not because you're successful again, but because you're trying. Really trying. I have you to thank for part of that," I told her. "You were honest when it would have been easier to just walk away without explanation. Would it have made a difference if I hadn't been?" I considered the question carefully. "Maybe not immediately, but your words stayed with me. Became impossible to ignore. When everything else fell apart, too." After dinner, we walked together to her hotel. There was no suggestion of rekindling our relationship. Too much had changed for both of us. But there was something new between us. Mutual respect. "Chicago's treating you well?" I asked as we reached her hotel lobby. "It is. New job's challenging but good. I'm seeing someone too." She smiled, clearly happy. "He's nothing like you, in the best possible way." I laughed, appreciating her honesty. "I'm glad. You deserve that." As we said goodbye, Tara studied my face one last time. "Your mom's saying about hard work just leading to more work. Do you still believe that?" The question made me think about the past year, about the collapse of my carefully constructed life of strategic laziness, about the painful, humbling process of building something real in its place, about the strange satisfaction I now found in facing challenges rather than avoiding them. "I think she was right," I said finally. "Hard work does lead to more work, but it also leads to more life, more genuine connection, more earned pride. I'll take the trade-off." How take the trade-off? In the year since that conversation, I've continued building a life based on actual effort rather than strategic avoidance. Jessica and I eventually became full partners in what is now a growing agency. My relationship with my mother has deepened into something honest and mutually supportive. I've even started dating again, approaching relationships with genuine investment rather than calculated return. My mother still occasionally says, "If you work hard, life will just give you more work." But now we both laugh when she says it, recognizing the partial truth it contains while rejecting its conclusion. Yes, capability often leads to increased responsibility, but it also leads to increased agency, to the power to shape your own life, rather than merely surviving it. I think about Tara sometimes, grateful for her brutal honesty. I think about Mr. Peterson too, acknowledging that his decision to fire me was the right one. I hadn't earned a second chance in that context. I needed to start over, to build something from the ground up through genuine effort. The path of strategic laziness had seemed clever, even wise, when viewed through the distorted lens of my mother's exhausted complaints. But it had led me to a life that was fundamentally hollow, filled with relationships that couldn't withstand honesty and accomplishments that dissolved under scrutiny. The path of effort is undeniably harder. Every day requires pushing through resistance, both external and internal. Every achievement comes with the understanding that more challenges wait just beyond it. But this path has given me something I never found in my previous life: the deep satisfaction of earning my place in the world. If you've ever been tempted to take shortcuts, to charm your way past challenges rather than facing them directly, I hope my story gives you pause. The easy path may seem appealing, but it leads to a life that cannot bear the weight of real connection or genuine achievement. The difficult path, for all its demands, leads to a life that can withstand scrutiny and provide lasting satisfaction. Have you ever found yourself choosing the path of least resistance only to discover it led somewhere you didn't want to go? Or have you pushed through difficulty and found unexpected rewards on the other side? Comment below with your experiences. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear it too. Thank you for listening, and I hope you find the courage to choose the meaningful path, even when it's not the easy one.